Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today we have quite the big build. It is the Pantsir S1. It is, in my opinion, a very great SPAA. The missiles are great, the guns not so much, but you can always change them if you want. But this is what I prefer, looks-wise. Yeah, it functions very well, handles well. It's kind of expensive, so it is more of a late game SPAA, but other than that, it's overall really nice. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's start welding. As usual, make sure your stand is unobstructed, make sure the stand itself is not interrupting anything, and, make sure you have all the parts and stuff to build it. Yeah. Then you just hit the button and start welding. Okay, now that our chassis is done, the next thing we are going to work on is our turret. So the turret is fundamentally very different from the rest of our builds. Instead of adding the projector on top of a junction block, we are actually just going to place the projector on either the left or right side in the middle here. Make sure you're facing from either this direction or this direction, lateral, on this vehicle. Otherwise, if you place it here or here, you're gonna mess up the connections to some of the ammo crates in the turret base. So just make sure you place the projector either here or here. So we're just gonna go ahead and place one on the left side because I said so. We're going to access that projector. Looks like we're gonna need to name it. Just name this like projector turret, something like that. Then we're going to go to it, go to blueprints, go to turret, which of course you can either download from the link or just make a blueprint of it yourself. Make sure your building repairs are off, obviously, before you start, so that way you don't have a mess to clean up. And then we are going to make sure that it is centered and facing forwards. This actually does matter which orientation you have it in. Make sure it's facing forward so it's not interfering with any of the conveyors. So after we double check and make sure that it's centered on this little rotor here, that's all good. Now we can start printing. And in case you're wondering, yes, we will just leave the projector in there. It doesn't really matter. Alright, now that we have the turret done, the next thing we're going to work on is all the accessories for it. First thing we're going to start with, though, is our radar tracking director. So first things first, we're actually going to move this hinge down just a little bit so we have more room to work with. You're going to place a normal block directly on the hinge first. You're going to follow that up with a 2x1 base on the right or left. You're going to follow that up with a normal row of blocks. Then 3 more blocks followed by a sloped block on the right. Next, we're going to go to our circular armored mantlet. And we're going to start by putting our corners down and then the side. And then we're just going to repeat that until we have a full circle. In the middle here, we are actually going to use the missile approach warning system half block, not full block, because if you use the full block, it won't fit right. So I strongly suggest the half block. Then we're going to go back to our mantlet, and then we're going to do the same thing here, except this time you can use like whatever block you want for the middle, or you can just not use it at all if you really don't care. I just use a half block, but again, personal preference. Doesn't really matter, nobody's going to see it. Next, we are going to move this forward, or backwards, I guess, down to about -55 degrees. And that will let it rest right on that lip there without causing any clang or anything. Now that we have the angle and stuff that we want set, we're going to put these vents right here. It's called engine vent 1x1. You're going to place one at the very end and one in the middle, like so. Perfect. Now we are going to move on to the radar search disk, whatever you want to call it. We're going to start with 2 solid heavy armor blocks. We're going to follow that up with half armor blocks on each side. If I can get up here. There we go. We're going to follow that up with half slip heavy corners. Well, I guess technically it's just called half slope heavy armor block. Then we are going to place another half block up here. We're going to place 2 corners like so. But then here's where we do things a little different. We place the heavy armor half corner block right here on each side. This is going to allow our radar to bend upwards, so that way it's not interrupted by anything. Next, we are going to place a hinge in the middle, like so. We're going to follow that up. You can use heavy or light armor blocks for this part. It doesn't really matter what you use. It's just personal preference. But we're going to want a 5 block wide area. Just like this. We're going to cut these corners and then replace them with the slopes. Then we're going to place another set of blocks right here. And then for the finer details, we're going to take some half plates and we're going to loop it all the way around this perimeter right here. I'll change the colors, that way it's easier to see. Now we're going to delete the middle, switch over to our hinges, and we want the AWG's flat hinge base. We're going to increase that to about 55 degrees. That's where I like to put it, but it doesn't really matter. Then we're going to follow that up with another hinge, except this time it's centered. Then we're going to increase this until it's a little bit forward facing, not too much, just a bit. About there. We'll do 55 degrees again. Once done, we'll take a centered half plate and place it on each side. That's the decorative part of this done. We're going to grab our AESA weapon core radar, place it in the back like so. It doesn't really matter the position, I don't believe. And then we are going to cover this up with some plates. Now we're going to go up here. You can place any sight here wherever you want to. I just like to use this site because it's minimal and it's not too visible, so that way it doesn't look that bad. And something I forgot to mention, so I'll mention this while we're here, is set a forwards limit on your hinge, so that way it doesn't try and clang out looking forwards too far. And then if you want to, you can set like an angle limit here as well, but I don't really mess with the angle limit. I just leave it as is personally. And that is our radar fully done. The next thing that we are going to work on is the gun set. So as you can see, we already have our rotors extended all the way out. You don't technically have to, but I strongly advise it, so that way you have an easier time trying to, shoot stuff and stuff like that, Anyway, we are going to move on. Once you get your two guns placed down, we are going to place 3 sets of normal AWG straight conveyor pipes. Make sure they are only 4 blocks long. And then we're going to go on to normal blocks. These are actually going to be 7 blocks long. And then we are going to place half blocks on the top and bottom. Once you have that done for both sides, the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to add 3 temporary blocks on the front, so that way we can actually place our missiles. And then we want to place them right on the edge, like so. And then you do that for both sides. Then you can delete this block, and the rest of the blocks will keep it in place, no problem. Afterwards, we're going to go back here. We're going to place some half blocks behind, so that way it's protected a bit. Once you have those half blocks, a little freeze there, but we're good. Once you have those half blocks placed back there, we are going to move on to this little sheet that goes on the side. So starting 1 block from the back, we are going to go 4 across. And then we're going to delete those 2. Or excuse me, we're gonna go 5 across. And then we're gonna delete those 2 and put a 1x2 slope here, or 2x1, however you want to put it. It doesn't really matter. Next, we're gonna go back here, and we're just gonna place 2 half blocks right here. And just like that, that is your gun part mostly done. The other thing that I almost forgot, correction, I totally didn't forget, is you're going to place a camera down here. And the reason why is because Mart, for some reason, doesn't want to recognize any of these weapons as a weapon or a tool for these rotors. So you need that camera there so Mart has something to recognize. But anyway, I'm going to skip ahead to whenever I have the other half of this gun done, and then we will move on to the next section of this. Alright, now that we've got the other gun done, we are going to move on to the chassis. Now, with this, there's not too much for the chassis. Quite literally, the only thing we're missing in the chassis at all, really, would be a small LCD in here, which honestly doesn't really matter. That LCD could be there, or you can leave it. It is purely decorational. It just shows, like, the target data and stuff. It doesn't really matter, but enough rambling. We'll start on the door, which really easy. We're just gonna follow the shape of this right here, really. So we're gonna start, of course, with half blocks. Make sure that you're placing on the hinge, which I just now realized that I am definitely not. Okay, we gotta place it the other way. There we go, that way. Then we're going to reverse that again. We're going to extend it, I believe, 3 blocks. And then place a tip there. Yep, just like that. Then for the windows, we're actually just going to use the 1x2 windows. And then we're just going to pile them on top like this. And then we pretty much just fill in the rest of the door. Again, if you don't know, like, how to do it, just literally just follow the way the door goes, and that's how you're supposed to fill it in. We're gonna put a sloped corner tip here. Like so. And actually, now that I think about it, I've already made a mistake. These should be tips as well. And then we put the sloped corner tip here. We're gonna follow that up, go ahead and fill that in while we're at it. Reverse it, check it. You can see we are currently a little messed up. Check it again. Okay, so we're extended out by a block too much here. You're going to want your half slope corner base right there. Check it again. Okay. So here, going to place that there. We're going to follow it up with a button panel right here. So we're going to type in AWG button. And then we are going to use the half block button panel right there. And then on the other side, you can either use the normal button, or what I like to use is the plate button, because we're going to plate up this door. But we're going to check it again. Make sure it lines up properly, which it does for the most part, but we did mess up a little bit. So we're going to go back and correct our mistake, which shouldn't take any time at all. like so. Make sure you're placing all of these with the slope facing towards the outside of the door. Go ahead and set this button up. Reverse. And there we go. That's your door done. And the other side's gonna be exactly the same as this one. There's literally no difference besides the side that it's on. Of course, like I just said, you can choose to plate this up if you want to. I kind of like adding 50mm plates just for extra protection on the doors from machine guns. But it is optional, you don't have to. That's just what I personally like to do. Put some sloped plate right there. And boom. Done. Just like that. Looking pretty good. And since this does take a minute, I am gonna cut to when the other side is done as well for the sake of saving time. Alright. Now that our other door is done, the last two little bits that we need to work on before we get to programming would be this little display right here, which, as I said before, this is like, all this is, and I can't speak. I am so sorry. All this is just a computer clock display. This really isn't anything important, so don't feel like you're missing out on anything if you feel like you don't really feel like messing with this, but for the sake of making sure it's done properly, we're gonna go ahead and do this. So we're just gonna place that on there. We're gonna angle it about 45-ish degrees. And then we're just gonna place a text panel on it, like so. Oh. Turn rotor lock off, that'll probably help a lot. Set it like right there. Let's call this like radar clock. That's what we'll call it. You can name it whatever, just as long as you can identify it. And then the second to last thing would be the trailer hitch. Now, the way I did this trailer hitch is pretty simple. Basically, all we're doing is we're putting a thin hinge on front, followed by a normal hinge. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the thin hinge on first. And then we're going to put the normal hinge on. Make sure the thin hinge is side by side and the normal one is up and down. And the reason we are using the thin hinge and not the like normal hinge, you might be asking, is because we need to be able to place a heavy block underneath it. What this little block does is, because the rotor has 0 torque, it will keep the hinge facing the proper direction in order for the vehicle to be able to attach to this hitch right here. So if I could find the right block, there we go. You can see now it simply swings downwards and it will eventually settle down there. For this hinge here, we just reduce the torque to about there, and that should be enough torque to keep it straight, but not so much torque that it becomes unusable, pretty much. And then we'll just set some limits. You can do whatever you want with the limits, honestly. but that's what I like to do. So with that done, I do believe we can start programming. So we'll just hop right back into the seat here. And well, actually first, just to make sure everything can run properly, we're going to disconnect this. Quickly copy it because it's gonna completely fall off. It's got no hydrogen, so we can't really drive it around right now, but that doesn't particularly matter. So we're gonna type in PB. We're gonna recompile all of these except for simple. For simple, you want to run refresh. So for simple, we go all the way down, click run, and then the rest we just recompile. For Mart, what we need to do is we need to take all of our weapons that are on those two turrets, highlight them all, highlight our cams, so camera elevation, and these. And I just now realized we did not click on Mart first, so we've got to do that again. Be sure that you're under the Mart group while you're doing this, otherwise, as you can see, you've got to do it again. So all of our elevation is placed properly. Make sure our two cameras are there. Okay, so it appears that I missed something. I thought that it would spawn with this, but basically all you're doing here is you want to take the FLIR camera system full block IRMV. Make sure all the little spots there are filled out. You can see if I rotate it, then one hole gets uncovered. So make sure both are covered, and then just, you know, obviously left click and place it in there. I thought that when it was auto welded, that would spawn with it, but clearly I was mistaken. So we're gonna go to Mart. Now we go to FLIR. Save. Double check PB Mart. And it looks like everything is in order. We'll double check, go to FLIR. Actually, I prefer to have that on 5. Group our 30 mils. And test fire just a little bit. Yep. We are working nice and smoothly now. Wonderful. Now that our Mart is set up, the next thing we're going to set up is our radar turret. So go to turret. You're going to click on custom turret controller. Go to one of your hinges, which I actually forgot to name. Sorry that I've been forgetting so much. Go back to your hinge here and just name it radar hinge. So we're just going to put radar right in front of that. Like so. If I can spell. There we go. Then we go back. Go to turret. And then we can assign the right turret. Hinge. That is not a hinge. That's a hinge. Then we click on whichever camera you put on top of that radar. For us, it's the FCS camera. And then, in theory, it should work. Okay, so it didn't have AI working because we were out of power. So yeah, once you have all that set up, that will be your turret radar setup. And this right here will be what allows you to keep track of vehicles from your Pantsir itself. However, be warned that you do have to have an antenna on, which you have in here. You can turn this antenna on right there. And that will allow you to have vehicles and stuff show up on this radar. The issue is, obviously, you have to have an antenna up. So what you can do is you can actually set up a turret block and antenna and the programmable blocks somewhere else. And those can relay information to your radar attached to your vehicle and feed you information that way, and it's much safer. Matter of fact, I actually do already have little sub radars, which I might post along with this, but we'll see. Oh, we got a little freeze. Go ahead and delete that. Now that we've got all of our programmable blocks set up, we are going to work on getting these guns sorted out. So I do not know in which order the Pantsir in reality fires off these missiles, and nor can I be bothered to know, truthfully. So what we're gonna do is we are just gonna go down like so. You're gonna go the outer layer and then inner, outer and then inner, and this really doesn't matter which way you want to do it, honestly. So this one we want to name the opposite way. So that'll be 7. We'll name this one Missile 8. This one Missile 9. This one Missile 10. This one Missile 11. And this one Missile 12. Now, this next part is completely optional. This is just to kind of get the guns to sound faster than they are. But basically what you can do is you can do chain gun 1, chain gun 2, then go to the other one, same thing. Chain gun 1, chain gun 2. You can even, if you want to be more specific, we'll put R in front of that. So that way we know that this one is the left side. So we'll put L, because that is definitely not the right side. We get a little goofy in these parts, but now that we have that done, we'll move back to our seat and go ahead and get these set up. So we'll start with the missiles first. We're going to go ahead and just group these, so that way they are already grouped and stuff. We are going to put this with weapon group ID 1. And then afterwards, we are going to mess with the weapon sequence ID. So that basically just tells you in what order are they going to fire. And then we fire them in the order that we name them. So you can see Missile 1, Weapon Sequence 1, Missile 10, Weapon Sequence 10, and so on and so forth. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory at this point, but we'll go ahead and get all that done. Okay, now that your missiles are set up, we're going to go to our 30 millimeters, 30 millimeter 1 and 2. We are going to set that to weapon group ID 2. Make sure it's not 1 because you don't want it to be on the same group ID as your missiles. Then, just as we did before, weapon sequence 1, weapon sequence 2. And then for your chain gun L and 2L, we are going to set that to weapon group ID 3 because we want all 4 of these to still be firing at the same time. We just want them slightly sequenced so they sound a little faster. So, once again, as before, 1, 2. We're going to go back to our missiles. Now we're going to set up some shot delays. So for this, we'll go 20. You can tweak with this and mess with it however you want to. Truthfully, I don't remember the settings for the Pantsir that I have posted by default. So we're just going to kind of tweak with it on our own. And then for this shot delay, we don't want too much of a shot delay. We're going to go like 4 maybe. And we'll see how that goes. Okay, so that's a little too much. So set the shot delay to 2. There we go. It's not perfect, and again, this is purely for like to make it sound a little bit meatier, but if you don't really care, you don't have to mess with this at all. This is just what I like to do. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this vehicle. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. I will gladly take any criticisms and try and make my videos better in the future, but with that all said and done, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, obviously subscribe, like it, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!